All right, I go by the name Andidua Godfrey, and today I'll be talking about climate regulation and carbon pricing and how they are affecting the oil and gas industry. Climate regulation and carbon pricing are policies used by governments to reduce pollution. They do this by making companies pay for the carbon emissions they produce. This issue is very important because it is changing how companies make decisions, how much they spend, and even whether they can survive in the future. In this presentation, I will focus on the oil and gas industry and use Shell as an example. My aim is to explain how these policies are changing the industry and how Shell is responding to them. Origin: external issue analysis. The issue of climate regulation started from scientific research showing that activities are causing climate change. A major global agreement called the Paris Agreement was signed in 2015. Its goal is to reduce global warming and reach net zero emissions by 2050. To achieve this, governments introduced global pricing systems. These systems make companies pay for the pollutions they produce, which encourages them to reduce emissions and invest in cleaner energy. In recent years, this issue has become more serious. For example, in Europe, the cost of carbon has increased to over 80 euros per ton, which raises costs for companies. Also, more countries are introducing carbon pricing, and it now covers about 23% of global emissions. Governments are also investing heavily in clean energy through policies like the Inflation Reduction Act in the United States and new rules in the European Union. Even though the 2022 energy crisis increased the use of fossil fuels for a short time, it also pushed countries to move faster toward renewable energy. Industry level impact. These changes are affecting competitions in the oil and gas industry. First, renewable energy like solar and wind is becoming cheaper, so it is replacing fossil fuels in many areas. Second, customers, including companies and governments, now prefer cleaner energy because they want to reduce emissions. Third, oil and gas companies are reacting differently. Some are investing in renewable energy, while others are still focusing mainly on oil and gas. This makes the industry more competitive and uncertain. Climate regulation is also increasing cost and risk for companies. Companies now have to pay more because of carbon pricing. There is also the risk of stranded assets, which means some oil and gas resources may never be used in the future. In addition, companies face legal risk from lawsuits related to climate change. There are also environmental risks, such as extreme weather damaging oil facilities. Overall, the industry is becoming more risky and less stable than before. Shell firm level analysis. Now let's look at Shell. Shell understands that climate regulation is a serious issue and has created a strategy called Powering Progress. The goal of this strategy is to reach net zero emissions by 2050. Shell is also investing in cleaner energy such as renewable power, hydrogen, and electric vehicle charging. In 2023, Shell invested about $5.6 billion in low carbon energy. This shows that companies trying to adapt to the changes. However, Shell still depends heavily on oil and gas for most of its money. A large part of its total investment still goes into fossil fuels. The company also uses external carbon pricing to prepare for future costs. Shell made very high profits in 2015, but profits dropped. Shell made very high profits in 2022, but profits dropped in 2023 due to changes in the market and government taxes. So even though Shell is making progress, it is still not fully transformed. Strategic evaluation. Looking at the bigger picture, the industry is changing, but not fast enough. Shell is doing better, but Shell is doing better than some companies, because it is aware of the problem and is investing in solutions. However, its transformation is still incomplete. The main challenge is balancing short-term profits from oil and gas with the need to move to cleaner energy in the long term. Recommendations. To improve, Shell should take a few important steps. First, it should invest more in low carbon energy. Second, it should increase its internal carbon pricing to better prepare for the future. Third, it should invest more in carbon capture technology to reduce emissions. These actions will help the company to stay competitive in the future. Conclusion. So, in my conclusion, climate regulation and carbon pricing are changing the oil and gas industry in many ways. They are increasing cost, changing competition, and forcing companies to rethink how they operate. Shell has started adapting, but it still has a long way to go. The key message is that companies must observe. They must change their business models to survive in a world that is moving towards cleaner energy. Thank you.